The Texans are set to sign Nick Chubb to a 1-year deal if he passes his physical. So 2 years ago, Chubb tore the ACL, MCL, and meniscus and medial capsule in his knee. That was week 2 of 2023. Last year, he came back. He struggled in 8 games. He had 102 carries, averaged 3.3 yards per carry, had a long of 19 yards. This was arguably the best running back in football during his career. And then he was a shell of himself last year. And then he broke his foot. So Joe Mixon, a consistent round 3 pick in our drafts. Heath, if they do go ahead and sign Nick Chubb, if it becomes official, what does this mean for the Texans backfield?
I don't really think I'm going to move Joe Mixon. Round 3, I think, was already factoring in a little bit of risk. We talked about these guys last week on FFT Express. These guys who have been top 10 running backs relatively consistently recently, but they've reached the age where we start to have concerns and we don't want to draft them as top 10 running backs. And I'd put Alvin Kamara in that list. I'd put James Conner just a little bit below, but kind of in that same group. Maybe even Aaron Jones. Mixon's still at the top of that group for me. He's RB16 for me, pick 30 right in the middle of round 3. That's where I'm good with him. The bigger impact to me was I was still in like round 10 or later drafting Nick Chubb with the hope that he landed in a better spot like Dallas or Chicago or maybe even Denver. It sounds like they're looking for somebody, but I don't like Chubb's just a dart throw as a hope. And there's a decent chance if he takes over for Mixon at some point, he's not good.
Jamey, what are your thoughts on it? Let me just say that I want to say Bijan Robinson had about 2/3 of the running back carries last year when Joe Mixon was healthy. So I removed week 8 and week 18. Week 2 and week 18. Week 2, he left about halfway through. Week 18, he barely played. When he was healthy, he had about 87% of the Texans running back carries. I haven't looked at every running back or anything, but I would guess that is right up there near the top, if not number 1. I mean, maybe like Kyron, but I mean, he just has like almost every carry. So what do you think about this signing here of Nick Chubb probably ending up on Houston?
Well, even with the games that he left, he was 7th in total touches among all players last year. So, all non-quarterbacks. So he averaged 20.1 touches per game. So that number is going to go down to whatever extent is probably going to be how good Nick Chubb is. I think the thing that this does is it improves the value for Joe Mixon because he still should be the best running back for the Texans. It kills, I think, any potential of Nick Chubb, to Heath's point, of being somebody that may be relevant without an injury. But it just is another situation of like, and it may change how people draft a little bit because I think, as we've seen, right, at least one of my big takeaways for the early drafts that we've done, like I want to get 2 receivers early, if I can, my first 2 picks, potentially 2 in my first 3 picks. But now when you get to that group of running backs, there's going to be a few guys that are going to be superstars and finish in the top 10. And that group is still Mixon and Kamara. And I think Ken Walker's in this group based on ADP. Connor, there will be the rookies drafted, not named Genty, in this range also. But it's muddy now, especially if Dobbins does go to Denver and takes away the feature potential of what RJ Harvey could be. Still maybe the best guy there, but don't know how that'll play out. So I hope it just sort of pushes that group down a little bit and you get them for a discounted price. I think we'll see that with Kamara, with the offense in New Orleans being, potentially terrible. But Breece Hall in a 3-headed situation, could be ugly. Chuba Hubbard now has more competition for targets. We'll see if Aaron Jones is still in this range also, but, now has a little tougher competition potentially. So it's, we talk a lot about this wide receiver group, 20 to 40, this running back group, I think like 15 to 30 maybe, could be a little messy as well.
I have to continue my personal DeAndre Swift streak. So I've been inspired by Adam's Tyreek Hill streak.
Yeah.
I think the guy I have right behind Mixon in the projections right now is Swift, and I'm not ranking him as high as I have him projected, but they're both like mid RB2s. And I'm going to be really interested if Chubb does sign with Houston and Dobbins signs with Denver. do we finally see DeAndre Swift at least crack the top 24 running backs in consensus rankings and ADP? Because every source I looked at this morning, he's somewhere between RB 25, 26, 29, 32 on one site. And I think that there's been baked in this summer, the fear of Nick Chubb, who visited the Bears, or J.K. Dobbins coming in and playing that Jamal Williams or David Montgomery role, and Swift's touches being limited. Now, it's worth saying that even when that happened, he was a good RB2 when he was in Detroit on a per game basis. But I would expect that he's going to be a riser if Dobbins also signs anywhere but Chicago.
It's hard not to, and like even, for me personally, like, I get a little scared about these older running backs, as I'm sure everybody that's listened to us for a few years is aware of. Like, why would you not take James Conner over Joe Mixon right now?
Well, so Mixon, I think, Joe Mixon has been a top 12 running back per game in 6 of the last 7 seasons. He had a late season slump last year where he had some very tough matchups. And he had 4 games down the stretch, 4 of his last 5 games, not including week 18, where Mixon had 14 or fewer carries. I went back, I looked at the box scores. The Texans did not have the ball for more than 26 and a half minutes in any of those games. So he finished so strong, so poorly. Before that, his first 7 healthy games, Joe Mixon averaged more than 24 fantasy points per game.
He was awesome.
He was not just awesome. He was probably the number 1 running back in fantasy, until that late season stretch on a per game basis. Now I didn't include week 2 in there when he left with an injury, but he was so good and he looked revived. And then he slumps at the end of the year, and wouldn't you know, at the end of the year he averages 4.1 yards per carry, which is basically what he does every year. He's been above that one time in 8 seasons in his career. But he was so good, and it was every single running back carry basically going to him, 86, 87%, whatever I said it was. So yeah, I just think that he has upside that Connor doesn't. But they are similar. I mean, Connor is so much more efficient, but
less competition.
They get a ton. Yeah, no, I get it, because you know what? I bet I could come up with a Connor stat that's pretty similar to Mixon, who's finished top 12 per game in 6 of the last 7 years. I think the difference is James Conner so frequently misses games or leaves games early. He leaves games early, and it hurts him at the end of the year in terms of per game. But he probably is pretty similar to what Joe Mixon has done. It's an interesting point.
Again, draft strategy. Like, to me, hero RB makes so much sense. Like, you get one of these guys that top 10, and then you hope to just sort of get 2 guys that can sort of be your RB2.
I know, but like Alvin Kamara averaged 19 PPR points per game last year.
And was a league winner where you got him. Yeah,
but Joe Mixon averaged exactly 19 points per game if you removed weeks 2 and 18. Week 2, he left with an injury. Week 18, they barely played their starters. Who at wide receiver in late round 3, early round 4 is good? Do you think has the potential to give you 19 points per game? That would be my argument against going hero RB, unless you're considering Mixon or Kamara your hero in round 3 or 4. I don't think we are. That's not exactly the strategy, but I guess it could be. But what I'm saying is I feel like those guys are better than the wide receivers going in that range.
I guess it depends on, what you're thinking the upside of those receivers can be. So if you're talking about, the guys in that range are going to be probably like Rashee Rice, McLaurin,
Garrett Wilson,
Tyreek Hill.
I don't know where
Devontae Adams. Like,
yeah,
I guess the argument is the same, right?
Well, I think you could definitely make the case that Rashee Rice has that upside. I mean, he showed it last year very briefly.
But if you're talking about, like, in the case of Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, you 2 guys are probably on different sides of the argument. Adam would say, right, Hill can get there again.
I don't think Hill's going to last that long personally, but yes, I would absolutely say Tyreek Hill can get there again.
And Heath, I'm sure you would say Adams can get there again. I feel the same about both of them, that they could, so it's just a matter, I guess, of how you like your roster build to be and what your, risk reward is on these older running backs that, yes, they were great last year, but now there's another year. And you're talking about, in the case of both the guys that you mentioned, Mixon missed time due to injury. It was hamstring or ankle, right?
I don't remember.
And Kamara missed 3 games at the end of the season with a groin injury, and now you're talking about, in the case of Kamara, his offense and his environment could be terrible, absolutely terrible. And for Mixon, if Nick Chubb is anything close to being healthy, forget about where he is as a player at this point. Healthy, he's going to take touches away.
Yeah.